Now, no temple needed, only an altar. Okay? You don't need a temple to be rebuilt. You only need the altar, or the cornerstone, basically. That's all you need. That is all you need. Okay? The abomination of the desolation set up in the holy place, um, which is the Temple Mount, essentially. Um, Obviously, Jerusalem is, you know, it's not a holy place, but when God comes and reclaims what is His, it is going to be the holy place. And at that time and prior, it was the holy place. So, I mean, you also got to look at what it was during the time that was written. Um, but he's saying that there is going to be an abomination of desolation set up in a holy place, which means it's going to be something that's built. It's going to be like an image. Who knows? Maybe it might be a pagan symbol. Maybe it might be like an obelisk or something. Um, you know, I don't know, but it's going to be able to speak, and it's going to be able to cause those that do not worship the first beast or take the mark to be killed, and these types of things. So it's this thing's going to have a strong supernatural evil force behind it, um, as it says in Revelations 13. It talks about that. Now, this actually kind of coincides with the Antichrist study I'm doing, and currently working on the third part of the Solomon factor. Um, I discussed the location of this Masonic type temple. Maybe it's a Masonic temple. It's very interesting. And what I said was that this is going to have to be put in a video format, and I figured this is the perfect time to do this, because I think this really falls in line with everything that's going to be covered here. Um, the images portrayed on Google Earth and these types of things, I just couldn't show you. Okay? Now, I'm going to read you a quote from the documents that I used. I'm going to read you a quote from the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Sion. See, again, we got to understand the difference between Zion and Sion, and if you haven't listened to part 2 of the Solomon Factor, please go to my website, MegidoRising.com, or Blog Talk Radio, and listen to that. I go into detail on the background, the overview background of Solomon. So go ahead and listen to that, and then you'll get more of a clear understanding of this. But this is a protocol. This is the Protocols of Zion, basically. And it goes, quote, "The Priorate de Sion, by its very name, appears to be associated with the Mount Zion." That's essentially Jerusalem. However, the Rock of Sion is spoken of in Masonic rites of the 18th century. And Sion in Hebrew, in the Hebrew Old Testament, was always in reference to Mount Hermon, according to Deuteronomy 4:48, from Eror, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, with a S, which is Hermon. And in the New Testament, Mount Zion with a Z, or Sion with a S, is Mount Zion, okay, with a Z in the Old Testament. Anyways, however, the Rock of Sion is spoken of in Masonic rites of the 18th century. It seems that the Masons gave another significance to the Rock of Sion other than that which indicates the sacred mount situated south of Jerusalem. Further, it says the text of the Protocols of the Elders of Sion ends with a single statement signed by the representative of Sion of the 33rd degree. That was from Holy Blood, Holy Grail, page 193. Now, using the Paris Zero Meridian as a reference point, Mount Hermon, the location of Dan, the tribe of Dan, we're going to get into that too, is located at the 33rd degree both of latitude and longitude. Now, this was an email response to this claim. After listening to you say Mount Hermon was on the 33rd parallel and the 33rd meridian, I got on Google Earth and decided to look around the area to see what I could find. Google Earth is a satellite pictures of the entire Earth. and you can navigate to anywhere you want to go and zoom in on your target. I was disappointed to find that it was out in the middle of the Mediterranean, so it seemed like a bust. Now, sometime later, I heard that the area was what is now the area that was said is now the Golan Heights. So I started scanning the area around the 33rd parallel in the Golan Heights area. Then I decided to refine my search, so I scanned around until I was at 33 degrees, 33 latitude. Okay, 33rd degree, 33 latitude. As I was looking over the terrain from a fairly good height, about 13.5 miles I altitude, and I'll show you this, I saw a small white dot below. At the height, it was obvious that it was a very large structure. It goes on to say, I zoomed in on the white dot, and it looked like a rather large building up on the very top of a mountain, with several roads going around the area. Wow. Then a few days later, as I was re-listening to one of the audios, this is from Watch Unto Prayer. Basically, you can go and watch, listen to audios. You're not going to agree with everything that is said, but it's very hard to refute a lot of this information, given with all the resources I have looked up and dug up along with this stuff. This is why I used this. I heard you say that the ancient longitude was from the Paris meridian, not Greenwich, and that there was a 2.5 degree difference, which would make the longitude 35.5 degrees instead of 33 degrees. So on our Greenwich meridian, I eagerly got back on Google Earth and found my white dot. On 33rd degrees, 33, 13. Very interesting. 33, 33, 13. And would you believe that the longitude was 35.5? I feel that this large structure on the 33.33 degrees parallel and the ancient 33 degree longitude must be, he's pretty convinced of this, a large pagan Masonic, whatever, temple. Now, obviously you can see Jerusalem here. This is Google Earth. Okay, this is Israel. Alright. And I did mark it. I did mark Mount Hermon. So let's zoom in on on Mount Hermon here. Okay. Going down. Okay, so this is Mount Hermon. Obviously it stretches pretty far. Okay. Now, just north of that, we see what could be this Masonic structure. So we're going to a little bit over here, and we're going to click on that and zoom in on that. And lo and behold, this is what you have. Now you go all the way up to 41, you can clearly see the dot here. Okay, you scroll down and go as close as I can, and there it is. This is that structure. I don't know exactly what it is, but it does look like some kind of a temple of some sort. But however, it's not in Jerusalem. It's north of it. It's north of Mount Hermon. There's a lot of significance in about Mount Hermon. Okay, and as I just quoted. So if we look, you can clearly see, I don't know if you can see on the bottom of the screen, but if you look, there it is. You see 33 degree, 33, and 13 at 35.51 east. 33, 33, 13 north longitude, 35.51 east latitude. So there you have it. That's what they were talking about. And you see the road surrounding it. And you see you see the driveway here. So I mean, I don't know. I can't say for sure if it's a Masonic structure. I haven't been able to pull anything else up on this. But it is pretty interesting just by the look of the building. Okay, so I figured I'd share that with you guys. I think it's pretty interesting. especially with the coordinates of it. Now, what's this about Mount Hermon? Now, I know I'm going to be quoting that this is going to be, well, anyways, we'll get into that in a minute. This is Mount Hermon. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, Hermon means forbidden place. Um, Jerome, which was a 4th century translator of the Latin Vulgate Bible, now, before you just start, like, throwing your hands up and stuff like that, you got to understand that Satan will basically likes to mix truth with lies. Okay, I mean he could give you a 99% truth and 1% lie, and it just throws everything out. A little leaven, leaveneth the whole lump. It's a lot of times how he deceives people. And well, he interpreted Hermon as anathema. Okay, that's just what it says. Which is interesting because the Encyclopedia Britannica, it means forbidden place. Now, Mount Hermon was the port of entry, possibly, for a group of wicked angels. I mean, very possible. Who corrupted the human race in the days of Noah. Moses wrote, "The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." Okay? Now, I'm not going to get into a study on the giants here. But if we look at the root words for Hermon, we get 2 of them, actually. And this is pretty interesting. So Hermon comes from the Hebrew, which means Kermoni, I don't know, which means abrupt. Hermon, a mount of Palestine. Okay. Now the definitions is, which means Hermon, which equals a sanctuary. Ah, that's very interesting. A mountain on the northeastern border of Palestine and Lebanon, and overlooking the border of the city of Dan. This is Hebrew 2:7-6-8. And give you some scripture references here. Deuteronomy 3:8, and we took at that time out of the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites the land that was on this side Jordan, from the river of Arnon unto Mount Hermon, which Hermon the Sidonians call Sirion, and the Amorites call it Shenir. And then Joshua 13:5 says, "In the land of the Giblites and all Lebanon toward the sun rising from Baal Gad, under Mount Hermon." So Baal Gad is under Mount Hermon. I mean, Hermon associated with Baal. I mean, not really bowing too well for that location now, is it? Unto the entering into Hamath. 1 Chronicles 5:23, and the children of the half-tribe of Manasseh dwelt in the land. They increased from Bashan and unto Baal Hermon and Sinir, which is also and unto Mount Hermon. Now, Mount Hermon and Sinir are basically the same thing. And Baal Hermon. Baal, again, you have Baal directly associated with Hermon, and Mount Hermon right here. That's where the half-tribe of Manasseh dwelt. I believe this was after the tribe of Dan dispersed and eventually became the lost tribe. And then the half-tribe of Manasseh took place of that land, of that territory, essentially. Now, we got Hermon from Hebrew 2:7-6-3, which gives us more of clarification of Mount Hermon. Hebrews 2:7-6-3, which says, Karam, a primitive root to seclude specifically by a band, to devote to religious uses. Very interesting, especially destruction. Really? The snorting of the horses came from Dan? They're always attributed to coming from the north? Physically and reflexively, to be blunt as the nose. Make accursed, consecrate, utterly destroy, devote, forfeit, have a flat nose, utterly slay, make away. It doesn't get much more clear than that. There's some more definitions for you. Number 1, to ban, devote, destroy utterly, completely destroy, dedicated for destruction, exterminate. To prohibit for common use, ban, to consecrate, devote, dedicate for destruction. To exterminate, completely destroy, to be put under the ban, be devoted to destruction, to be devoted, be forfeited, to be completely destroyed, to split, slit, or mutilate a part of the body. There was a lot of sacrifices and stuff that took place over there, and I'll show you the pictures here in a moment. Now we see I'm going to give you some reference verses here. In Jeremiah 25:9, we see this word used as destroy, which says, "Behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land." Now you're specifically referencing the tribe, the southern kingdom of Israel. Now, a lot of people will say 100% that, Israel is just representative of people. Yes, that is true. Okay? Also, it is also represented as a kingdom. Okay? All you have to do is do a keyword search, Kingdom of Israel, and in Kingdom of Judah. Okay? And look at what kingdom means in the Hebrew Old Testament. Kingdom literally means country. So, eventually at some point in the Old Testament, what was Canaan or Palestine ended up becoming the Kingdom of Israel, northern, and the Kingdom of Judah, southern. So there was a split. There was the north country of Israel. There was the south country of Judah. Scripture is very clear on that. And against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment, and an hissing, and in perpetual desolations. Hissing? I mean, like a snake? Pretty interesting. We'll get to that in a moment. Destroying. This is another term that is used. You can find it in Isaiah 37:11 and other places, but I'll just give you this one. Behold, this is Isaiah 37:11. Behold, thou hast heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all lands by destroying them utterly, and shall thou be delivered. And then accursed. Joshua 6:18. And ye in any wise keep yourself from the accursed thing, lest ye make yourselves accursed. When ye take of the accursed thing, and make the camp of Israel a curse, and trouble it. Now, God judged the angels. We reference that in 2 Peter 2:4-5. If you don't remember, you can go and look that up and look it up again. But both Peter and Jude added further insight about these fallen angels. Peter said, God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. So, and then Jude put it this way, according to Jude 6. The angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he hath reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Now, both passages tell of a severe punishment upon the Nephilim. Yet Moses said that sons of God reappeared after the flood. A lot of people would like to say that, the sons of God were a direct descendant from Seth, or that's what the cemeteries or seminaries, Bible seminaries teach, or they go to the New Testament and see, we become sons of God. That is true. But the term sons of God, I believe, comes up 4 times in the Old Testament, and every single time it's always in reference to angels. Okay, you can see it once in Genesis, and I believe actually 3 times, and 2 times in the book of Job. Okay, so, and you can look it up. Every single time it's always in reference to angels. That's it. That's all it is, according to the Old Testament. Now, Again, yet Moses said the sons of God reappeared after the flood. Now, how can this be? Well, the book of Enoch only mentioned, according to the book of Enoch, it only mentioned 200 angels, and Satan was not among them. Bear in mind, Satan's forces were much larger than a mere 200. Perhaps the original group of Nephilim were scouts for a much larger force of demonic angels who, under the leadership of Satan, came to earth after the flood. Who knows? A possibility. It seems to me that the Tower of Babel, meaning gate to God, or portal to God, gateway to God, may have been built in an effort to contact these dark forces and forge a defense against the threat of another judgment. As noted above, Genesis 6:4, which adds "and after that," and also after that, meaning that more Nephilim returned to this area after the flood and established what Joshua called the land of giants. Where was this land of giants? Moses and Joshua conquered those giants, of whom Og, King Og, OG, was king. Moses wrote that Og's bed was almost 15 feet long, according to Deuteronomy 3:11-13. Og reigned where? In Mount Hermon. So that's where Og reigned. He was a giant. Chances are he's probably a descendant of the Nephilim race. Reigned in Mount Hermon. Joshua wrote, "And the coast of Og, king of Bashan, which was of the remnant of the giants that dwelt at Ashtaroth and at Edrei, and reigned in Mount Hermon, and in Selka, and in all Bashan, unto the border of the Geshurites and the Maccathites, and half Gilead, the border of Sihon, king of Heshbon." So there we have another reference to Mount Hermon and affiliated with these giants, and it's not good. And also, just look at the Greek mythologies and stuff like that. All the gods that came down to Mount Olympus and these types of things. Where do you think they probably got those legends from? I would imagine they probably spawned it from what happened in Genesis 6 and so forth. Obviously, it's bunk, but still, that's where they probably get. That's probably where a lot of people get these legends and these mythologies and these types of things, probably from Genesis 6. Moving on, them did Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the children of Israel smite. Joshua 12:4-6. Now, the tribe of Dan moved to this area during the days of the judges, and adopted the Canaanite worship of these angels. It was an ancient idolatry that opposed the worship of Jehovah. In fact, Baal and Asheroth were Canaanite deities, whose origin was Mount Hermon. The book of Judges even calls Mount Hermon Baal Hermon, saying, namely 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon unto the entry in of Hamath. Mount Baal Hermon? Mount Hermon doesn't look too good as a nice place to be. And again, when we look at this, just look at where it is. Not too far. There's Hermon, and there's that Masonic structure, so it's affiliated with the north here. Furthermore, the fallen angels living on and around Mount Hermon adopted a biblical name for the mountain. They had the audacity to plagiarize a name that God had given to Mount Moriah, Mount Sion. So that's what they did. They basically plagiarized it. Moses wrote, "And they possessed his land, Sihon's land, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, from Aror, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, with an S, which is Hermon." As I stated above. So you know the tribe of Dan and the people that were attributed there, I mean, they plagiarized what God had set as Mount Moriah to mean Mount Zion. So what did they do? They moved up to the north and renamed Mount Hermon Mount Sion. Gave it a little twist. See, Sion means lofty, whereas Zion means stronghold. It is evident that Satan was pushing for a counterfeit of God's plan for man's redemption. The devil was determined to replace the seed of the woman with the seed of the serpent. In a book entitled The Gods of the Lodge, author Reginald C. Hott Jr. described what he found during his trip to Mount Hermon. Quote, in the excavations of Baalbek, renamed Heliopolis by the Greeks, temples were uncovered honoring Baal and Bacchus. The name is true of the site at Sidon. The temple there is named the Temple of Baal of Sidon, but by far of greater importance was the Temple of Baal found on Mount Hermon. Perhaps it would be more meaningful to you if I, Regional Hout, quote direct from my source. So in the 1982 edition of the Thompson Chain Reference Bible, 4th Improved Edition, the archaeological supplement was provided by G. Frederick Owen. Dr. Owen wrote on page 376 of his supplement of the following. Mount Hermon, the chief of the mountains of Palestine, is 5 miles wide and 20 miles long. It has 3 peaks. Interesting. The tallest of which is 9,166 feet above the Mediterranean Sea. For centuries before Abraham's time, the mountain had been venerated in connection with Baal. Baal worship was the leading religion of Canaan. On most of the high peaks of the country were shrines known as high places. Again, Satan wants to take his throne above the stars of God. He wants to be like the Most High, so he wants those high places. The higher, the holier. So here, groves were planted and shrines erected for worship. Since Mount Hermon towered above all the other mountains in the region, it was the chief high place, the shrine of shrines. Canaanites looked to Mount Hermon much as the Muslims face Mecca when they pray. Here's another quote. During the summer of 1934, Dr. Stuart Crawford and this writer, Reginald Hout, led a small expedition in which we studied the ancient Baal shrine surrounding Mount Hermon. We located many ruins, and in each case the shrine was so oriented that when the priest and the devotees were at the altar, they faced the chief Baal sanctuary, or Qibla, located on the highest of the 3 peaks of Hermon. We then ascended the mountain and found the ruined temple of Baal, constructed of Herodian masonry, which dated it to just previous to and during the early Christian era. In a low place near the northwest corner of the temple, we excavated and found loads of ash and burnt bone, which had been dumped there as a refuse from sacrifices. Now, during the ministry of Jesus, he and his disciples visited Caesarea Philippi. You can see a photo, which I'm going to show you in a minute, where the Jordan River springs forth from the slopes of Mount Hermon. In the photo, one can see the grotto and cave where Baal worship was in full swing. While observing these shrines, Jesus posed the question, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" So you can imagine, I'm pretty sure the shrines were probably still there possibly, and how fitting that he picked this location to ask this question. So Jesus was standing in the territory of his great enemy, Satan, and his idolatrous Nephilim. It was an area out of which Antichrist would or could arise from. And here you can see a picture of it. And I don't think you can read the caption, so I'll just read it. I mean, you can see all 3 of these shrines here, and if you go further down, you have that grotto or this cave, and you have like another cave here. This is an artist's conception above of Caesarea Philippi, also called Pania, so this is an artist's work here. During the Roman period, this pagan religious site was built into the cliff face with temples dedicated to Baal and many other deities. The site shown below is as it appears today. And you can clearly see what looks like ruins, and you can see the cave structure right here. Very interesting. Moving on to the tribe of Dan. Now, Jacob prophesied that Dan would be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path. Very interesting. According to Genesis 49:17, and Moses prophesied, Dan is a lion's whelp; he shall leap from Bashan. Now remember, we just talked about Bashan and Mount Hermon and how that's affiliated. And Moses prophesied, Dan is a lion's whelp; he shall leap from Bashan. Huh. According to Deuteronomy 33:22. These two prophecies are remarkable in that they connect Dan with the seed of the serpent, from which the Antichrist will emerge to claim the title Lion of Judah. Very possible. In the book of Judges, the Danites relocated to the northern reaches of the Promised Land. They settled at the foot of Mount Hermon in the territory of Bashan, and adopted the idolatrous Canaanite religion of Baal and Ashtaroth. Eventually they left for parts unknown and became the proverbial lost tribe. However, the Danans, or i.e. Spartans, remember the Spartans, of the Greeks, established the same religious practices that the Danites had developed on Mount Hermon. Greek mythology, remember I just mentioned that, is an elaborate reinvention of the Danite religion. The Spartans invented a messenger of the gods and called him Hermes. Hermon, a variation of Hermon, whom the Romans called Mercury. Oh, my word. Supposedly, Hermes had a son named Pan. The name Pan could be a corruption of the name Dan. Today, the Arabs call Caesarea Philippi Banias, but that is because there is no P sound in Arabic. The older form was Panias, meaning city of Pan, from Panion. The name comes from Pan, the pagan god who was worshipped there. Nikes for Pan statues can still be seen. Observe the niches and cave grotto in the photo in 4 BC. This area became the tetrarchy of Herod's son Philippus, who renamed Panias as Caesarea Philippi. This name continued until the reign of Nero. The name Pan means all things, all gods, or all life. Therefore, when the Romans built a domed temple to commemorate all their gods, they named it the Pantheon. It is a combination of two root words, Pan, standing for the son of Hermes, Mercury, and Theo, meaning gods. It is clear that Mount Hermon, with its infamous fallen angels, found its way into the mythologies of many ancient cultures. Solomon also had something remarkable to say about Mount Hermon. Song of Solomon 4:8. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shenir. Remember we mentioned that? And Hermon. They're connected together. From the lions' dens, from the mountains of the leopards. Now here Solomon mentioned a lion's den and the mountains of the leopards. This may be a reference to the prophecy made by Moses calling Dan a lion's whelp. Deuteronomy 33:22. It seems that Solomon was aware of the Danite connection to Mount Hermon and used the metaphor of the Danite lion's den When the Danites first arrived in northern Israel, they conquered the village of Laish, meaning lion, and renamed it Dan. The Book of Judges reports, 1829, Judges 1829, and they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born unto Israel. Howbeit the name of the city was Laish at the first. And Laish means lion. Now, furthermore, Solomon mentioned Mount Hermon in connection with leopards. It is said that Ham's grandson, Nimrod, wore a leopard skin as a symbol of his kingship. That's what they're saying. I mean, that's what it's said anyway. Also, there are paintings of Egyptian pharaohs adorned with leopard skins. Even some medieval European royals wore leopard skins. An ancient Jewish commentary connected Nimrod's leopard skins with the coats of skins belonging to Adam and Eve. And I'm going to quote from it. Truly he was a man of might, because he was clad in the garments of Adam, and was able by means of them to lay snares for mankind and beguile them. Rabbi Eliezer said, Nimrod used to entice people into idolatrous worship by means of those garments, which enabled him to conquer the world and proclaim himself to its rulers, so that mankind offered him worship. He was called Nimrod for the reason that he rebelled against the Most High King above, against the higher angels, and against the lower angels. And then Rabbi Simeon also said, our colleagues are acquainted with a profound mystery concerning these garments. Now, Daniel 7 and Revelation 13, the Antichrist seems to be connected to the metaphoric leopard. You look at the beast in Daniel 7 and the inauguration of all the beasts in Revelation 13. Now, we cannot say with certainty that Adam and Eve wore leopard skins, okay? But there are a number of sources that suggest Nimrod wore a leopard skin. Among them was Alexander Hislop in his work, The Two Babylons. And I quote from that. The custom of taming a leopard and pressing it into the service of man in this way is traced up to the earliest times of primitive antiquity. In the works of Sir William Jones, we find it stated from the Persian legends that Hoshang, i.e. Nimrod, the father of Tammuz, who built Babylon, was the first who bred dogs and leopards for hunting. As Tammuz, who built Babylon, could be none other than Nimrod. This legend only attributes to his father what, as his name imports, he got the fame of doing himself. Now, as the classic god bearing the lion's skin is recognized by that sign as Hercules, the slayer of the Nemean lions, so in like manner the god clothed in the leopard skin will naturally be marked out as Nimrod, or the leopard subduer. That this leopard skin, as appertaining to the Egyptian god, was no occasional thing, we have clearest evidence. Very interesting. Wilkinson tells us that on all high occasions when the Egyptian high priest was called to officiate, it was indispensable that he should do so wearing as his robe of office a leopard skin, as it is a universal principle in all idolatry that the high priest wears the insignia of the god he serves. This indicates the importance which the spotted skin must have had attached to it as a symbol of the god himself, obviously little g. Alexander Hislop, The Two Babylons. So now, I wanted to put all that into perspective, how it relates to the possible temple, how the temple does not have to be built, all they need is the altar, and also how I showed you that there is possibly a temple-type structure north of Jerusalem, slightly north of Mount Hermon, okay? And that's just, it's very interesting. And then you look at all the things with Dan, how Dan is seen coming from the north all the time, and the horses were heard from Dan and these types of things. So, there's a lot of significance there. And plus, it seems like to me that Mount Hermon is also probably one of the most paganized sites in the world. So how fitting would the Masonics or the Masons and these types of things would want to put a temple there? Okay? When all they need is really just an altar over there in Jerusalem. That's all they need. They don't need to rebuild the temple.